Welcome to Smacky's Garage. Today we're going to be working on changing the jets on a Holley 750 Ultra Double Pumper to go a little bit smaller, to go a little bit leaner. I've had this carburetor on the 1969 Mustang behind me ever since I've had it on the road, which is a few years now, and it's always been running a little bit rich. One of the things I noticed is my plugs are running a little bit darker than they should, and my air to fuel ratio is probably in the 12.5 range while I'm cruising. So the car is running rich. So we're going to go through step by step of replacing the main jets on the primary side. The secondary side is going to be the same, but I want to see what adjustment just the primary side has first before I really start playing around and going deeper into tuning it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's get the carburetor ready. Let's get it off the car and let's change out the main jets. Now here's the carburetor we're going to be working on. It's a Holley 750. It's a double pumper, and it has metering blocks in both the front and the rear. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the fuel rail from the primary side here. Now the reason why I'm removing this fuel rail is because it's going to make it easier for me to remove the bowl and get it out of place. So you can see that is off now. Now we need to see if there's any fuel in here. Now to drain the fuel bowl, I'm going to put this down here to try to soak up some of the gas if it comes out. Now you can see I'm going to remove this bottom screw down here. And by removing this screw and loosening it, it's going to make the fuel from the fuel bowl come out. So we're going to start down here by opening this, and we're going to catch it all in this paint cap. And my wife is not going to yell at me because it's not going to get on the floor and it's not going to smell the house up like gas. See, removal of that, you can see the gas coming immediately out. So I've decided to take the carburetor out because it's easier to show exactly what we're doing. Now we're working on the primary side because we want to replace the primary side jets. We're going to leave the secondaries as they are for now, and we're not going to change them. So to do that, I'm going to remove each one of these 4 different screws. What you're going to notice is as you remove these screws, there's going to be a washer, I believe it's a nylon washer, on each one. And the point of this washer here is to make it so it doesn't leak. So you need to make sure that when you pull this out, you get the screws with it, or you'll have an issue with leaking later because they do fall out of place. Now, this should just fall right out of place. Okay, now with that out, we can see the jets. Now, this is a metering block, which essentially helps route the gas from one location to the next. What we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up taking out the jets. So there's a jet here, and then you have your power valve in the center. To take it out, it's going to be simple. We're just going to remove this. We're going to set it up on the bench here, and then we're going to end up just taking it out with a screwdriver or the Holley tool. So this should just come right out. While that's out, you can see the gasket that's left on the metering block. I'm going to leave this because it looks in good condition. Now with this here, you can see the different pathways that the fuel potentially is going to take when it's getting back to the main carburetor body. So coming through this, you can see it's going to go in through the jets, and then out through different areas here, and then it's going to come through into the main carburetor body. All right, so we have this metering block here, and you can see both of the jets are here and they are dirty. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take those out. So I'm going to take the tool, which has a little blade on it, just like a flat-bladed screwdriver, and has a whole pin that goes inside of the jet. So I'm just going to get them in place. And in place. I'm going to twist. Man, these are tight. So, first time using it, and my tools are already starting to get bent. So I'm going to end up using just a giant flat-bladed screwdriver. Oh, got one. These are extremely tight. Man. All right, both of them are out. That was a lot more work than I expected. You can see some damage caused when I took them apart. Yeah, so probably not supposed to be that tight, but if you look at them, they're pretty well damaged now that I took them out. So I'm going to use a tool to put them back in after I do a good inspection and clean this out, because I don't want any crap to get in there. So these are both 72s, 72 and a 72. So we're going to go down a different size. So to go down more, we're going to go down to a 70 from a 72. You're always supposed to jump 2 different sizes. I think there's 3.5% difference between each different size. So if you're going from a 70 to a 71, that's 3.5. If you're going from a 72 to a 70, that's going to be 7%. In order to see a difference, you really have to jump at least 2 sizes. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to replace these with the new ones. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the new jets in. The easiest way to get the jets in is to use a tool, because it not only does it make sure that it doesn't over tighten them, but it actually holds the jet in place so that if you're trying to do it sideways, if you're doing it upside down, if you're doing it in the car, it's not going to fall out. So with this, I can just as easily twist them in. Make sure you don't strip them or cross thread them, and then tighten it. Do the same thing with the other one. Get that in place. It's a good fit. And both the jets are in place. Now we're going to put it back together now that the jets are in place. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put the metering block back on. There are going to be pins that hold it in place to make it a little bit easier. We're then going to take the float assembly and the float bowl, and we're going to make sure that this arm here ends up under this spring here. That's the accelerator pump cam arm. So I'm going to go ahead, put that in place, make sure that's underneath. We double check to make sure that the screws have the washers on them, so the nylon washers that are going to seal, and then we're going to put everything in place and then torque it down. Now these 4 bolts, it's important to get the torque on them right, so make sure you look up what the specification is on your carburetor. I've noticed that when they get over torqued, it actually damages the gaskets on the inside of the metering block and the outside of the metering block. What that ends up doing is it causes the fuel to go into the squirter to not go correctly, and you could pick up air. It's just going to circle around inside the float area. So make sure you torque these correctly while you're putting the car back together. So the carburetor's back in, we're back on the car, ready to go. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take it for a test drive. There are really 2 different ways that we can look at how the car is running now. 1, we can look at the spark plugs, or 2, we can use the air to fuel gauge. If you don't have an air to fuel gauge, you can look at the plugs to see exactly how it's performing. If the plugs are looking black or dark, you're running too rich. If it's white and chalky, then you're running too lean. If it's more of a tan colored, more natural colored, then the plugs are where you want that air to fuel ratio to be. Now the way that I'm going to tune my car is I'm going to use the air to fuel ratio meter that I have right on the steering column. It makes it much easier to tune, and it gives you pretty much instantaneous feedback where you don't need to take a plug out. You don't need to really shut the car down while you're going 35 miles per hour. So it makes it a lot easier. So if you're going down this path, it makes sense to get an air to fuel gauge for the car and to use that to tune it. Now, next week we're going to be talking more about carburetors. We're going to be taking it apart and we're going to be looking at each one of the different systems and how they work. So don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and be ready for that video. So I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Smacky's Garage.